Hello there. So I received quite a few text messages over the last couple of hours talking about what a potential revolt would look like if states left. And so I didn't want to just repeat what's already out there. In fact, there's a Wikipedia entry on the participants in the Texas versus Pennsylvania, Supreme Court. I'll call it a decision, but they didn't even review the case, so I don't know if you can call that a decision. But at any rate, there is a map out there of what the plaintiff looks like. Of course, that's Texas, and then all of the states in orange that sided with Texas. And then it has the states in blue that petitioned the court or sent in a filing or a brief against Texas that also included U.S. territories, which I'll get to in a minute. States in purple that decided to be Switzerland and not be on anyone's side. That was Ohio and Arizona. And then you also have the states in gold here, where the Attorney General and Governor have filed opposing briefs, which happens to be Montana. How bizarre is that? Just before I dive into the map, and I'm not going to regurgitate that map in its entirety, but one of the things that I noticed in news reports is that you'll see a title that says 23 states have sided against Texas. And that's not completely accurate if you read the news reports, which isn't surprising, because in this brief, District of Columbia is listed. So is Guam in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it's not 23, it's actually 20. So I'll get that out of the way. Let's look a little bit more at the brief real quick. There's something you'll notice at the bottom of the section labeled Attorneys Generals who supported the plaintiff in this case, which is Texas. There's this entry that says there's also supported briefs from two pseudo states, New California and New Nevada. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. The New California link works, and you can go there and see if you don't know what New California is. It lists all of the different versions or flavors of California that could exist. I'm sort of partial to the most recent one, which is that there's a Northern California, Southern California, and then just California. If they could extend California up to Silicon Valley and take San Francisco and Oakland, I might be willing to support that one. If I remember correctly, we have to vote on this, so all of us would have to agree that that's what the new state would look like, not just California petitioning. I'm actually not opposed to the sixth state either. It just gets a little bit too granular for me. Then it's like each county is its own state. It's kind of bizarre, but it does have San Francisco and Oakland in their own states. It's just weird. I don't know that this would really even make a difference given that you've broken it down into so many. But anyway, I'm sort of partial to this one. Now, going back, the Nevada link does not work. It's a broken, or it's a placeholder page. So if you want, you have to go out to DuckDuckGo and search for the new state of Nevada, and you'll get a couple stub pages in here. There's one for newnevadastate.com, and there's also another one called newnevadastatemovement.com. Very light pages. Most of their stuff is on Twitter and Facebook. There's really no view of what that state would look like, but their grievances are listed there. The last thing I'll mention before I dive into the map is the petition to have Oregon and Washington broken into a separate state that would actually join Idaho, which I find pretty fascinating. It also includes Northern California, so that could mean that there would be then maybe just two parts of California or three, or maybe California stays kind of as it is and the northern part joins this new Oregon, Idaho, and Washington movement, whatever that would sort of look like. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit later. So there's your new states. There's the breakout. Let's go to the map and take a look at the map real quick. So I regurgitated a bit of what the Wikipedia page has as an entry, and I've got the non-law-abiding states in blue, contested in gold. There's one state, Nevada, that's non-law-abiding, but also contested, and that's purple. The states that have not decided yet in green, and there are 7 of those, and then all of the states that sided with Texas. And from this initial map, you can sort of see most of it is in the West. the middle part of the country, what we would sort of call flyover country, right? And then largely in the south. All right, but I wanted to take this a little bit deeper to talk about what could happen if some of the states that are undecided and those that are contested finally made up their mind and decided to do something. So let's just say, all hell broke loose. So I've got a different scene here where we can look at each state once they've maybe made up their mind. And you get a clear distinction here, which shouldn't be surprising, right? We have the East Coast versus the West Coast, and then the rest of the country, sort of in the middle and in the South. The question, though, becomes what if this is at all accurate? We're at 25 and 25, so 25 states. I've labeled them loyalists, so I've gone with sort of a Star Wars kind of theme here. If they're loyalists or they're separatists. All right, and I've made a couple of assumptions that a few of the states, like Arizona, which is contested, goes red, Nevada, which is contested, goes blue. I've left all of the other contested states blue, except for Georgia, and this actually makes us 26-24 at this point. But if we were to go back and we were to change this, and I can do this on the fly here, I can just go in and change sort of how I've had these states laid out. And so if I take Georgia, which I had as loyalist and then listed it as separatist and reversed that, I can come back and refresh it and we can see what this sort of looks like. And so it turns blue and we're back at 25-25 here. Now, what if we changed some of these? And I'm thinking this is a macro view of everything. I want to do something different to get down to the micro view within each state and what these look like. And that would be to say, well, what would happen? This is weird to have a separate country sitting in New Mexico and California, given that they would be surrounded by whatever this other country would be, or this separatist group. And the reality is, if we looked at just Colorado and we were sort of to zoom in on this map and we looked at Denver here, Denver is just Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste of San Francisco. I'm not joking. That's probably how most of those people are. A lot of them came from San Francisco over here, and that's how they think. So one might say the rest of the state is pretty red, and I don't have the counties up here, but that would be my guess. Nevada is a bit bizarre, but it's smaller, populated, not as densely populated. It's not unreasonable to think that it would be sitting between these states and just become a red state itself. So if that's the case, we can go back and we can take Colorado and we can make it separatist, and we can do the same thing with New Mexico and make that a separatist state as well, and then give ourselves a little bit of an update here and see what that would look like if we did that. All right, so those change. And you have this huge amount of states here that are red. The other question that would come up is then, of course, what would happen to Georgia? And that's iffy. I really don't know that state well enough to say what would happen. But Michigan has this intense desire to be a red state. In fact, they're contemplating whether they want to impeach their governor. So that's another issue there in and of itself, and that can turn red. And if we did that, we changed Michigan from loyalist to separatist. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do another update there. This then becomes a red state at that point. It gets even more bizarre because now we have another huge area that's kind of cut off from the rest of the country, and that's Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And if you really think about Illinois a bit, I want to call it the coagulation, but the mass of folks that are going to be considered blue in that loyalist part are really sitting here in the upper corner of the state, and some in the lower portion of the state by St. Louis. But these will be mostly what you would consider that blue loyalist group. The rest of the state is largely red, because it looks a lot like Indiana. So what happens to that? And given that Madison, Wisconsin is here and Milwaukee is here, it's likely that this individual part of southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois then becomes its own kind of area. Geographies break down at that point. Where the borders are of the state, I don't know that it really matters much. It's where the people are and what the people think. And at that point, if that's what happens, you have this huge area of the United States that becomes red. Shifting over to Washington, Oregon, and California, where we already know that the eastern parts of both Oregon and Washington, and then the part of Northern California, want to become part of Idaho. We zoom in, and I'm actually going to reduce the filter here, the layers here, so we can make these a little less opaque and we can see what's going on. And I point out the Cascade Mountain Range that runs from the Canadian border in northern Washington all the way down to Northern California. The blue part, or the loyalist part of those states, would be mostly on the Pacific coast, where the red parts, the separatist parts, would be mostly on the eastern portion of those states, hence why that group is desired or wants to move in and be housemates with Idaho. You only have this really weird thing that's going on in Montana, but that's just between two people. That doesn't really take into account the entire state, and that gets to a larger point about the colors of the states being what the individual attorneys general decided to do, not what the people want to do. And that's what makes putting this map together and think about what's going to happen at a macro level very difficult, because what an individual person might decide is very different than what the governor or the legislature or an attorney general might decide. So that makes picking this apart and seeing what would happen much more difficult. But either way you look at it, it's kind of an ugly thing to really dive into and think about. That's all I wanted to cover right now. In a future video, I think what I'm going to dive into is the individual counties within certain states like Washington, Oregon, Nevada, and California that I think might be relevant to talk about what possibly could happen there. Of course, the same thing in Wisconsin and Illinois, and then maybe talk about Georgia and Atlanta and what's happening in that state. What do you think will happen? So there's a couple different possibilities here, and I'd love to hear your comments on it. Of course, we have, are the new states even possible? Do you think that that's a reality? It is difficult to admit a new state to the Union, let alone break one up. So is that even possible? Will any states secede? Is that something that you think is realistic? Or do you think this is a ploy or a threat by the states that joined Texas? So post your comments. I'd love to hear feedback, and that'll help inform me for future videos. Don't forget to subscribe. Always should mention that, right? Subscribe, click the bell, get the notifications, all that good stuff. Thanks.